Welcome to today's webinar. The topic for today is engagement while in isolation for memory care environments. My name is Megan Klein, and I will facilitate today's event. Please note, the information contained in this presentation is intended to provide general information, but not advice about certain regulations and initiatives. This is not intended as legal or other advice, and each situation may vary depending on the particular facts and circumstances. You should not act upon this information without first consulting qualified legal counsel. Today's webinar will be presented by Dr. Cameron Camp. Dr. Camp originally developed the use of the Montessori method as an intervention for use with persons with dementia. He is a noted psychologist specializing in applied research in gerontology and currently serves as Director of Research and Development for the Center for Applied Research in Dementia. Dr. Camp gives workshops on designing cognitive and behavioral interventions for dementia internationally. These interventions are all designed to reduce challenging behaviors and increase the level of functioning and quality of life of persons with dementia. He has co-authored 3 college textbooks and published over 150 peer-reviewed articles and book chapters. Dr. Camp is a fellow and past president of Division 20, the Adult Development and Aging Division of the American Psychological Association, a fellow of the Gerontological Society of America, and a charter member of the Association for Psychological Science. His research has been funded by grants from the National Institutes of Health and the National Alzheimer's Association. He is a recipient of the American Psychological Association Award for Distinguished Professional Contributions to Applied Research. And now, please welcome Dr. Camp.
Thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate that. What you have in front of you is our website, so I'll refer you to that. And at the end of the presentation, I'll show you some pages on the website where we have some free resources for you to use. So we're talking about engagement in a time of isolation. We're talking about residents in memory care who may be confined to their room and have been confined for weeks, if not months now. And the amount of time they will continue to be confined is relatively open-ended. Senior care may be one of the last elements of our society to be opening up. And so what does it mean to be engaged? What does it mean to be able to engage persons with dementia in these wildly unique circumstances? So to be engaged, engagement involves purposeful activity. We never give busy work to persons with dementia or to persons without dementia. Activity should have personal meaning. So it should be something that's relevant to the individual. And when a person is engaged, we don't see responsive or what other people sometimes call challenging behaviors. When we're engaged, we are focusing our attention on what we're doing. And this is when we're at our best. And this is especially true when we're doing things for other people, when we are helping others rather than just focusing on ourselves. So let's start off by talking about engagement between staff members and persons in long-term care, especially those with dementia. Staff engagement is more important now than ever because with the inability of family members to come for visits very often, or in many instances not at all, the main persons that an individual with dementia is going to be engaged with is the staff member. And so how to be able to do that when you're walking in and worried about the virus when you have a mask on. So one thing that we always advocate is for staff to have very large name tags, just first name. So mine would be Cameron, and you want the letters to be very large and with good contrast between the letters in the background. The function of the name tag is to enable the resident to be able to call you by name, and you can point to it. Being able to call someone by name is important. If you've ever been at a party where someone who looks familiar comes up and starts talking to you and calls you by name and you can't remember their name, that feeling is very uncomfortable. And you see if they're wearing a name tag and whether it's big enough to read, you try not to look conspicuous. When we call a resident by name and they cannot name us, we put them in that same situation. So you want name tags that can be read. You want to call them by name and invite them to call you by name and point to this. It helps also to have your photo. It can be some places they put it on badges, but to have your photo there also so that they're not just seeing a person with a mask. Some places they have clear masks where you can see, the face. And to also explain why you're wearing a mask, because especially in memory care, a person may not remember why this is happening. And so to be able to give them some reassurance that you're doing this so that you can keep them safe at this time. And so little things like that make a very big difference. Communication is a key to engagement. So it's important to explain what you're doing, to say why you're wearing the mask. Remind the resident of who you are. Remind them that you've worked with them before, that you know them and you've been with them before. If you can remember something about them, you can bring it up. Like, yes, didn't you tell me the other day that you've got 3 great-grandchildren and one of them is in Spain? And so it's that reassurance that you're able to give that's very important when you're going to be interacting with a person, especially when they've been in isolation. All of us are different now than when this lockdown started, with or without dementia. Social isolation has an effect. And so we have to remember that. We have to treat people the way we wish to be treated. As always, it's important to give choices to residents, to be able to say, would you like to wear this blouse or this blouse? Would you like to do this now or later? Would you like a bath or a shower? Giving choices is what contributes most heavily to a person's quality of life, to their sense of having some control over their life, and the way they feel about someone who does give them choices is different than the way they feel about someone who just tells them, please be still. I have to get other people dressed too, so please don't make trouble. Maya Angelou said, I will forget what you say, I'll forget what you do, I'll never forget how you make me feel. And that's especially true in persons with dementia, especially true now. It helps if you choose very carefully the words that you use. In our training, we always say, get rid of the word can from your vocabulary when you interact with residents. Can you help me is a test. Would you help me is a choice. Would you gives control to the resident. They may say no. Can you is a test. I hate to be tested myself. And so little things like this heavily influence the feelings that a person has toward you. And when you ask for their assistance, would you help me with getting this shirt on, with these pants on? Would you pull this leg up and I'll pull this leg up? Those little things make a huge difference. And it cuts both ways. It's important for residents to be able to show appreciation to staff, to be able to make thank you cards, to be able to put together posters and put those things on their doors. It's important for them to be able to express their thanks, but also to be able to show that they are in relationship with staff. Engagement, community especially, is all built on relationship. And these days especially, as I said earlier, it may be the staff that are the primary and sometimes only contacts that these individuals have. And so being able to maintain relationship and to show that externally especially is very important. This is also a chance for residents to get to know other people. So, for example, you could do a Zoom interview with the executive director, director of nursing, with heads of departments, and make these, record these Zooms, record these interviews, and make them available for staff, but also especially for residents to be able to view. What are some personal, pieces of information, like where they were born, where they went to school, that residents may not know about these individuals. So again, creating community, using this as an opportunity for people to learn about each other. That is a way to try to continue our push to create community, to be able to engage, to be able to let people know that there are real persons out there who are thinking about their comfort and their safety. This is an example of a story, a reading piece of material about the coronavirus that was written by, in France, these people are called animators rather than activity staff or activity directors. So the animator there with her child and with residents put together this story about the coronavirus. And this is a story then that can be kept in residents' rooms so they understand what's going on. Not knowing what's going on is a lot more scary many times than having an understanding about what people are hearing on television, why people are wearing masks, that sort of thing. And so this is a resource that you can download from our website and print out for yourselves. It's free. I'll give you more information on how to do that later. We also have some posters that can be, or cards that can be placed in residents' rooms as external memory aids, as ways of being able to remind them about what's going on and why. So for instance, this one talks about why they're requesting persons to stay in their room. This talks about why their family is not able to visit for several weeks. A resident may ask this question, why can't my family come to visit me? And you may tell them the answer, and it may make sense to them, but if they have dementia, they may not be able to remember those spoken words. But the worry about where's my family is a constant. It stays with them. And so after the memory of the spoken word drops out of their memory system, they ask the question again. And so if a person with dementia cannot store information internally, the formula is we store it externally, such as in this card. We keep it in the same location because persons with dementia can learn locations. If you don't believe that, try seating a resident in the chair at lunch where another resident usually sits and see what happens. People learn where they like to sit. They may not consciously learn it, but they learn it unconsciously. They learn location. So keeping the message like this card in the same location. And then when they ask the question about when is my family coming, saying, there's a message about that. Let's take a look. And getting them used to looking at that card when they worry about where their family is. So that's a general strategy for many situations where you have repetitive questioning in memory care. And this is why they're serving all meals in their rooms once again. Why do I have to eat here? Why can't I go to the dinner table? Where am I? I want to sit with my friends. And so storing the information to the question externally, keeping it in the same location, giving people practice going to that location, looking at that location, having them read this out loud to you so they get practice doing the reading rather than you reading it for them. Engaging with family members at this time. So in the evenings, my wife likes to read children's stories to my grandchildren. And she can also do that on Zoom and then record that so they can see it at other times. Even letting a resident watch you do a car repair or wash a car or do the laundry, letting them just be there as part of that activity to observe it is something that people may not think about as important, but it's a way of keeping that connection there and letting the person with dementia know that life's going on, the family's all right, they're doing their regular things. Just being able to see this is a way of normalizing that environment when otherwise it would be a very, very tiny room that's your entire world. So it's something that's relatively easy to do. You can use, FaceTime or some other media for that, but it's a way of staying connected. I like to play Candyland with my 5-year-old grandson in the evenings, and we each have our board, and that's a way for us to stay connected. Thinking into the future, when these restrictions are lifted and family members begin to come back, we have to prepare family members for this experience. As I mentioned before, the residents will have changed since the last time the family members saw them in person. The residents have been in isolation. Dementia may have progressed. They've been used to a much quieter environment in a lot of circumstances, a lot more sedate. And so if family members come back and they rush in and they bombard the resident with questions and a lot of talking, let me tell you what's been happening over the last 4 months, 5 months. It could be overwhelming. And, when stimulation is overwhelming for a person with dementia, you elicit a fight or flight response. And it could be very disappointing for family members if the resident says, leave me alone, stop, please leave. So enabling family members to ease into this process may be very important. Be able to have short visits and slowly expand, to focus on small things, to be able to do this perhaps while they're still wearing masks. And so again, name tag and the photograph, enabling family members to ease into this transition will be an important thing. And we need to prepare for that. We need to be proactive. In one of the communities we've been working with in Illinois, the residents in memory care were helping make masks for organizations in the community. They would cut out mask material in a pattern and then put these outside their door, and then these materials would be taken and cleaned, and then other people would sew them together. And when a person in memory care is cutting out material for masks, it's one of those situations I talked about earlier where they're doing something for other people, where they are thinking of a larger community and how they're contributing to other people's safety. And so we always look for, again, the purpose, in engagement. What is the purpose? Who is it for? Is it meaningful for the individual? My wife regularly calls older adults who go to our church and who are living alone. to make sure that they're doing okay, to see if they're all right, to see if they need anything. And so if a person in memory care can use a phone, they can call other residents. They can call people in the community who may be on a list from a church, similar to what my wife uses to find people to call. Persons in independent living can call residents in memory care, again, to be able to create that sense of community. So just being able to check up on people to see if there's something that they need. Is there something that would make their lives more comfortable? And just that, again, that human contact, that relationship is so important. And, it could be the highlight of a resident's day to get that phone call. And so enabling people to be part of that process is a way to fight through the isolation. So yes, within and outside the community, as I mentioned. We have reading materials that we use to create reading and discussion groups. And what I've seen now in some places is that people will come to their doorway and they will be able to take part in some group activities such as bingo. And they might also be able to listen to stories, and if they're inside their room, to be able to do some reading aloud, and everyone can be following along. We can also put these things in a recorded fashion. So one of the things we're doing now is we're going to record some of our stories so that residents in memory care can listen to them in their rooms if they wish to. This is like an example of one of them. And we'll be putting this out on our website for free downloading in the very near future. So this is called Family Vacation. And what would happen is people would see this and I would say, Family Vacation. Do you remember packing up the car with your family once school was out and heading for someplace fun? Do I remember that camera or have a suitcase like that? Many people headed for the beach or the mountains to relax and unwind. Florida, Hawaii, Niagara Falls, the Grand Canyon, the Catskills, and the Poconos were some popular travel destinations. Anyone ever been to the Niagara Falls? Been on that ship? I think it's the Maiden of the Mist. Or gone down the Grand Canyon on a burro? The Catskills were known for their comedians. A lot of very famous comedians started their work there. There's a story about a 94-year-old man who was in the Catskills and he hated the show. So he was out walking through the woods and he came upon a talking frog. The frog said, "I'm a beautiful princess. I'm 18 years old. Give me a kiss and I'll be your wife." And the man picked up the frog and put him in his pocket and kept walking. After a while, the frog says, "Ain't you going to give me a kiss?" The guy says, "I'm 94 years old. I've had 4 wives. I think for company for now, I want a talking frog." So, yeah, it's always good to elaborate on the material. There are a lot of musicians who are out of work now, and so we're unable to, do that as one of their jobs. So what we're working on now is how to enable musicians to connect with people who are in isolation, especially in memory care. So at Roundtree Gardens in the suburb of Los Angeles, activity staff would bring an iPad to resident memory care, and a musician would be in their studio and ask, here are some songs, which of these would you like me to play? And you get a free request and individual concert like that. There are a lot of musicians now who are looking at ways to reach these audiences, and especially local ones. And so this is a way, once again, to connect to give engagement. At Sunnyside in Sarasota, Florida, we're looking at creating a virtual choir among memory care residents and other residents as well, assisted living, independent living. And you'll be able to hook that up through internal network systems. So how to enable music to still be a regular part of a person's life. Libraries and other community programming sites are making interesting programming available. And again, libraries have been struggling, and so finding ways for their outreach programming to be made available to persons in isolation is a way for residents to be able to have that connection. There are amazing community programs that are being put on in terms of historical societies, museums. They're really having to reach out now. And so this is an opportunity to find out what sort of virtual programming they have and to make that available to persons in isolation. So once again, finding what's personally meaningful and enabling residents to have access to that. This is the time because so much of that content of organizations is being put out there onto the web, given that they can't have large crowds there. Another important element to all of this is to be able to take care of yourself. This is true for staff members especially, as well as for residents. So here is a handout that we have. Again, it's free. You can download it from our website. A kit for gardening your soul, cultivating your health in terms of how to get past confinement. So it has a series of small 5-minute meditations, mindfulness exercises. This was developed by our colleagues in France, and we've done the translation here. So here's a breathing exercise, for example. Like the last sentence, observe and accept without judging or criticizing yourself for passing thoughts. Observing on the left, chambre, room 208, see. Put your attention on an ordinary object in a residence room, in a break room in your car. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Now observe the object, which usually seems so ordinary, as if you're discovering it for the first time. It's called the beginner's mind in mindfulness exercises. So how to be able to take a break from the anxiety, to take a break from the stress. It's important in those little windows of getting away from it are very important. And again, as I said, this is something also that could be done by residents. We've been doing work in training residents in memory care to lead activity for other residents. And one of the things we've been doing is looking at how to create resident-led yoga, resident-led mindfulness within memory care. So we know these things can be done. Have a glass of water, bring it to your mouth, drink slowly while you focus on each sensation of the flow of water in your body. Repeat this during one of your micro breaks in the morning, afternoon, or evening. Yeah, so mindfulness exercises, very straightforward, very simple. And those were, yeah, okay. Sit comfortably in a quiet place. You can access a free video, inhale, exhale. A mind gym for the brain. Lighten your load. Sit in a quiet place. Set a timer 5 minutes. Get a punching bag. Turn on upbeat music. Calmly return to what you're doing. Little things, but it's these little things that make or break a day. And the world can be, and the job can be relentless. I mean, it can be relentless, and going back to it day after day after day can be overwhelming. So there is that real need to take breaks and to invest in yourself. This is also very true for family caregivers. Very true for family caregivers, especially if they're at home with someone with dementia. Now they have difficulty going out, and so being able to take care of yourself is a critical element to getting through these times. Self massage, and you can access videos. There's some scanning codes to help with that. And again, here's some further references. So another resource is the National Center on Advancing Person-Centered Care Practices and Systems. So I'm going to try to give you some resources for you to be able to access. Again, you're going to be able to see a recorded version of this webinar. So hopefully you'll be able to download and look at some of these websites. But here is a reference that gets you to their Facebook page. You who do screensavers can do that. Again, you can send in questions. We can feed this back to you. From the same source, person-centered thinking skills in a time of crisis. So Mike Small is a person who's had decades of work in person-centered care. He's done work with adult developmental disability as well. And so it's a video that has a lot of resources, a lot of good ideas, and you can also get that video transcript there. So Michael Small's a really good resource for you to look up and just find out whatever he's done and read as much as you can. I recommend him very highly. Dementia Australia has many great resources just for memory care in general, but they also have a page on coronavirus tips for residential care providers. And everything they put out into the world is free. They just distribute it very widely. PDFs for the most part. You can just download and then use. You have to get used to the English spelling. So color is COLOUR, likewise behavior. But I've worked with Alzheimer's Australia, and that has since evolved into Dementia Australia. I've worked with them for about 12 years or so, and they are excellent. Recommend them without a reservation. They have a lot of videos. We've done a lot of work with them in documenting how to implement Montessori approaches for dementia care, and they really are cutting edge people and very decent people too. So Dementia Australia is a great resource. Here's an example. Let's see. So there's their Center for Dementia Learning at Dementia Australia. Winsong Memory has residences in Oregon and in Colorado. And we've been working with Windsong for a number of years. Windsong at Eola Hills in Salem, Oregon was the first memory care residence that our center credentialed as a Montessori-inspired lifestyle community. And they've won numerous awards for dementia care excellence. And these are some of the things that they're using at this time. Monitoring that. Megan, can you still hear my mic? I'm just checking in here. Yes, good. All right, I'm back. For them, there are a handful of residents who don't have family members in the area to shop essentials for them, so they gather lists in advance and do shopping once a week for residents who don't have families who purchase things for them. They work with 3 small exercise groups twice a week. They include 5 to 6 residents to ensure safe distancing. You know, there's some places that let a resident get out of their room and walk around for 5 minutes. And they schedule this throughout the day so that there's time in between people coming out. But being able to get out of your room for at least a few minutes each day is important. I know every day my wife and I and my daughter, who's living with us, we like to get into the car and I drive around our area here in the suburbs of Cleveland, and I purposely try to get lost so that we can see new places, but also just get out of the house and not be always confined to the same walls. So doing that on a smaller scale is important. They deliver happy hour drinks to rooms. So windsongmemorycare.com is the place to go. I asked Stacy Flint, who's one of our primary contacts there at Windsong, to tell me about some best practices that they've been implementing, and she sent me a 2-page list of single space typed things that they're doing. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, I recommend that you get in touch with Windsong Memory Care. They have some great ideas, and they're very much into being able to share those things as well. And then I wanted to talk about the fact that Direct Supply also has resources that they're working on. They have one called Tell Our Stories, and the connected community is there where people in senior care share their stories. So there's a Tell Our Stories app from the Apple Store and Google Play Store, and it enables you to get to the connected community where you can see what other people are doing, where you can share what you're doing that's working, where you can ask questions. And so that is a resource that Direct Supply has been developing, is working on. It's here now. And again, I recommend it highly. Those are the good guys. And so there's how you download on the apps. And Bob and Kevin are the people who help put that together and drive that. So my hat is off to our friends at Direct Supply. So there's our website once more, and I'm going to kind of walk you through what happens if you go to our website. If you put that into your search engine, it takes you here. And this is a page where we have COVID-19 and free resources. We have other products as well, but I'm not going to plug those in this particular webinar. do take a look at it. And we've had our products translated into multiple languages around the world. And then we get ideas and we share, as I said, around the world. We're in the process of creating a worldwide idea bank for care. So be watching for that in the future. As I mentioned to Megan before we started, the price will be that an organization or individual promises to share one idea a year, with the promise that it's not somebody else's intellectual property, that they are willing to let other people use it, and they're not going to try to take ideas and monopolize and monetize them. So anyway, that's coming attraction. You click that, if you click this tab, it'll take you to here. And so here are those cards that I demonstrated, visual cues. Here's the example of the reading story about COVID. Here is a way to download that Gardening for Your Soul set of materials. We're going to be putting up new materials all the time. These are just 3 examples that I mentioned here, but new materials that are free for distribution. We'll also put up some of those Zoom recorded reading roundtable stories, such as the one about family vacation in its entirety, and making it available to people. So I thought at this point that we would start taking some questions and seeing if people would like to share some of their experiences as well, and do some brainstorming. And if not, I start singing again. So for God's sakes, please make some comments or ask questions. And I can talk for days and days, but I thought it'd be useful to find out what was on your mind. So Megan, if that's all right, we'll.
Absolutely. We can get started. Thank you, first of all, for that wonderful presentation. Why don't we start with this question? How does this information relate to the range of residents you might see in a CCRC?
Right. We do work with CCRCs all the time. We actually have begun credentialing CCRCs, not just memory care residences. And so the idea involves how to create relationship across levels of residential care. So what is it that, for example, persons in independent living might be able to do for persons in memory care? And that's where the example I gave of people in independent living calling a resident in memory care to check on how they were doing, and having a list of people that they call. So like they called these 2 people on Monday, these 2 people on Tuesday. Being able to share experiences. So to have things like a virtual committee meeting, to be able to do a virtual planning for an event, to be able to have a virtual storytelling time where people sort of have an afternoon tea party where you've got a number of people who are able then to just have a conversation. With the capacity we have now with iPhones and iPads and TVs and internal network systems, that works well also. To be able to send get well cards to people, or thinking of you cards. Again, every time you get a chance to do something for other people, as opposed to doing something for yourself. To be thinking about the needs of outside organizations. So, what are the needs of churches, food banks? What can be done to collect and focus on being able to help people who don't have food to be able to connect with your family and ask if they could help donate. And those things are gathered by staff. So it's about thinking in terms of community. But the other thing that happens is when you enable persons in different levels of care to work jointly, to have a common purpose, to see each other as persons rather than by labels, you also begin to break down a lot of the stigma that's associated with memory care, especially in CCRCs, I was at a CCRC earlier this year before the lockdown, where members in assisted living and independent living and memory care would all get together and make chef salads for persons in a homeless shelter that was nearby. And the people in the homeless shelter said, we get all this meat and potatoes, but we never get greens. So they would get together, and people with more advanced dementia would peel, take the stems off of spinach. Okay, but then that was their contribution to the chef salad. And when a person in memory care doing that died, they had a memorial service, and people from the homeless shelter came also. And in that place, the stigma affiliated with memory care is significantly reduced because they still see the persons rather than those labels. So the idea would be, under these present circumstances, how can we still enable those connections across levels of CCRC, especially if activity can involve helping persons outside of the community, the general community, and that could be done as a collective effort with people being able to contribute based on what abilities they still have.
Excellent. So we did have another question come in that asked, how do you suggest getting more buy-in from your staff to engage them with these activities?
Right. And so one of the first things to do is to talk to the staff and to talk to them about what the job is like now, and to ask them if they would like to try some things that might reduce their stress, to see what happens. It's about offering choice. It's about these very basic human approaches. We need to be able to engage staff as well as to engage residents. These are human things. We're doing a lot of training now looking at how to use Montessori principles for staff and for residents, how to give choice, how to make work meaningful, how to enable a person to focus on their strengths and to use those to be successful. And so the bottom line would be to talk with staff to get their ideas, their input about what would make sense to them for engaging residents more effectively, to ask them if they think that would help with their job, to ask them if they would like to try some chances to take brief breaks and to reduce their stress and to do some of these exercises, to ask them when would be the best time to do this, where would be the best place to do this, as opposed to imposing this. Can you do this as opposed to would you do this? Once again, these Montessori approaches aren't about dementia. They're about ways of interacting with people, of engaging people, whether they're 3 or 93 or 33. And so it's a general set of values and principles that can be applied for human beings. And so it would be about empowering staff, getting staff committees together and trying their ideas, giving them that space, that opportunity to solve their own problems and to communicate and be treated with respect and dignity and equality, just as we tell them to treat residents. a long answer, but it's a good question.
Absolutely. This is another one that just came in here. So we had a participant say at their dementia facility, some families have started to choose not to video call residents because they don't want to upset their family members due to them not remembering them over the phone. Do you have any advice for the family members or any suggestions for staff on how to help ease their minds during this troubling time?
Yeah. So the first, question we always ask when we encounter a challenging situation is, why is this happening? Okay. So if I understand the question correctly, you have family members who are telephoning a resident and saying, hello, how are you doing? Uh, how's your day gone? And one, um, as we talked about with doing with staff, it's important to start off each conversation with hello. This is, and then your name. I am your daughter. Sometimes it's difficult for a family member to do something like that because the thinking is, they should know who I am. I'm their daughter. And so a little thing like introducing again who you are, and I'm living here in town and I can't see you now, but I wanted to check on you and see how you're doing. This is also where those cards can be very useful because it can remind residents that they're going to get a phone call at 4 o'clock from their daughter. And if that card could have a photo of the daughter, for example, uh, also to think about one or two things that you could relate to uh, the resident. Would you like to hear what your granddaughter did today? Okay. And would you? And then for staff to be able to write up something that happened with the resident that they could relate by reading it rather than having to try to remember it when they have a poor memory system. When you're asked questions and you can't answer them, it can be very frustrating. And so I remember how you make me feel. You do that repetitively, and after a while, people don't want to answer the phone. There have been people in my life where after a while, if I saw their number, I don't answer and I let it go to voicemail. And it's because of the way they made me feel. This is human stuff. It's not necessarily dementia stuff. Dementia has an element that contributes, and so the idea would be how to make the calls and the interactions positive things. Could they sing together? What's the resident's favorite song? If there's any visual medium involved, could they be using that to show their face or at least show what's happening around the house? And so it circles back to the question, why does the resident not want to keep taking those calls? Okay, that's what has to be addressed. And it's, pretty straightforward stuff much of the time. And little tweaks, can make it better. And it's not a rejection of the family members. It's just that it's easy when you're in isolation and when you have dementia. It's easy to become frustrated. And my wife was watching The View today, and one of the ladies there was saying, you know what I hate? I hate people who call me up and tell me how great they're doing now and how they're learning new languages and how they're taking on new products, new projects. I don't want to hear it. And so you can also overwhelm a family member by talking about all these different things as well. And it relates back to how are we going to ease back into visits. So you want to find like that window where this is long enough to have a nice engaging time, but not too long so that you overstay the welcome, and better too short than too long. So those are just some general things to think about, but it's very human stuff. Okay? It's very human stuff, but there are things to try at least to see if the situation can be made better.
Absolutely. Now, this one that came in is very relevant for the time we are in. Do you have any suggestions on helping memory care residents to accept wearing masks as we are requiring them when they are out of their apartments, and how to practice social distancing so they can help understand?
Sure. So the good news is this. Procedural memory or learning procedures is a strength that's usually available to people with dementia, at least certainly in early and moderate stages. Okay. But to learn a procedure, you need to practice a procedure. Okay. And there also has to be a reason that makes sense to the resident as to why they should be doing this. So a couple of things. First, a discussion about the use of masks. The use of external aids, such as the cards, which talked about the use of masks so that a person who cannot store information easily internally in memory can learn to look at the information externally. And with practice, oftentimes that information can slowly become internalized. To be able to give the person practice using a mask inside their room before they go outside their room. To explain to the person, and it has to make sense to them why they're going to need a mask, to remind them to keep on the mask, and of course, to always demonstrate, we lead from the front. So, all of us are having to wear masks now. This is not just about you, and this is so we can protect other people. I do this so I'm not going to harm anybody. And when we do it for another person, that's very different than saying, I don't need any protection. Okay? They couldn't hurt me, and if they did, I don't care. As opposed to, I'm doing this so that I don't make somebody else ill, so that I don't harm other people. I'm doing this for other people. So the purpose, once again, as always, the purpose has to make sense for the individual. And then, social distancing. If you line up now at the grocery store, there's like a lot, there's a marker, and you're supposed to stand in this square or stand behind this. And so those sort of external cues, once again, can be used, and to remind the person, where to stand with a sign, please stand here until the person in front of you moves. And then there's a technique called spaced retrieval, but it involves giving a person practice remembering something successfully, opposed to telling them. So you would say something like, what does this say? I should stand here and wait until someone moves. Okay. And then you wait a little bit and say, why are you standing here? Because I have to wait till they move. That's right. You wait a little bit longer. Why are you standing here? Well, you just told me, because I have to wait until they, and you give them practice remembering it at like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes. When you can push a retention interval beyond 10 or 12 minutes in a person with dementia, the information often jumps into long-term memory. So you can actually teach a person how to remember something that's very important like that with the right training. So taps into a memory system that's still available in most persons with dementia.
Wonderful. We're going to get one more quick question in here before we wrap it all up for everybody, to be mindful of time. Do you have any suggestions available or top of mind for memory care residents who are further advanced?
Yeah, and so several things. Further advanced, you may have to rely more on demonstration as opposed to speech. I would always check to see if they can read, and you want to check that by seeing if they can read words that are an inch high, half inch high, as opposed to small print. so that signage may have to be much larger for them. You want to look in terms of if they can hear, are there sounds or voices or recorded music that is calming for them. You may want to think more in terms of sensory stimulation, be able to engage them, and also for them to be doing things with their hands. We always say, what are they holding? What are they holding? Even something like ripping up pieces of newspaper that can be used as bedding for puppies in an animal shelter, in a rescue shelter, and then having photos back of the puppies, and then having like a picture of the puppies and with the example of the shredded paper, so it gives them something to do that they can do that's outside of themselves. So that would be an example.
Well, this has been wonderful. So thanks to everyone for those great questions. And of course, thank you, Dr. Camp, for your expertise and your time. And we would like to send our thanks to everyone who took the time to join us for today's webinar. If you have any additional questions about what we discussed today, please email us at webinars@directsupply.com. And for more information about any upcoming webinars, please visit directsupply.com/webinars. Once again, thank you for attending today's webinar on engagement in isolation within memory care environments. Have a wonderful day.